Hey, everybody. My name is Matt Nightingale, and it is my privilege to welcome you to another conversation. I am the executive director and founder of an organization called Common Sanctuary, and we are here to advocate, communicate, talk about LGBTQ matters at the intersection of faith and sexuality. We've had lots of different conversations. They are all housed over on the Common Sanctuary YouTube channel. And today I'm excited to talk with Dr. Matt J. Warner. You may have heard of him recently, especially those of you who are mutuals of mine on Twitter. He has an interesting story, and he's going to share it today. I'm not going to give away much of it. I'm going to let him tell his own story. And the comments are open. We are streaming live on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and I believe on Twitter. We'll see if it works. That's a new thing for today. But yeah, please check out my website over at Matt Nightingale. I do know how to say my own name, mattnightingale.com or commonsanctuary.org. And you can read all about the work that I do. You can read about the work of Common Sanctuary, and you can check out more of these conversations. You can also feel free to chat throughout the conversation, put your comments and questions in the chat, and we will get to them if we are able. Would love for you to say hi. Please feel free to do that right now. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Matt into the conversation. So hello, Matt, and welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
Glad that you're here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Coming to us live from Winona Lake, Indiana today, where it is 3 hours later.
Yep.
So I spent years in Winona Lake, Indiana, actually. I went to Grace College from 1990 to 1995. Took me 5 years to graduate with a music education major. And then I actually stayed around and worked at the college as an admissions counselor for another couple of years until I moved to California in 1998. But yeah, I'm super familiar with that area. My brother, Micah, still lives in Warsaw. You know Micah. You and I hung out with him a little bit at Christmas time. But yeah, I want to start with a quick story of my own, and then I'm going to invite you to kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your story. So I first got to know you on Twitter. And I still call it Twitter. I know lots of people call it by its official name, x.com. I just can't bring myself to do that because I've been there since 2008 and I love it. And it's kind of where I've made my largest social media platform. But Twitter has been such an important place for me. And I've gotten to know so many people. And you were one of those people I got to know. I don't know exactly when. I wanted to go back and look and I didn't have time. But I remember getting to know you at least a year and a half ago, maybe, probably more. And I thought you were cool and you were interacting with me and I appreciated that. And some people don't want necessarily to interact with an openly gay Christian person. But we were interacting and having a good conversation. And at some point, one of us mentioned Winona Lake, Indiana. And you said something about, I'm moving there in the fall. And I was like, really? How interesting. And you said, yeah, I'm going to take a position at Grace College. And I remember my first reaction was like, danger. What are you going to Grace College for? It didn't compute to me because from my experience, Grace College is a very conservative, some might even call it fundamentalist, Christian college. At least that was my understanding. So I remember thinking, oh gosh, I hope this guy knows what he's doing. If he is the progressive person that I have experienced him to be on Twitter, yeah, he might be going into the lion's den here. So that was my first wondering and concern for you as I got to know you on Twitter. And now here we are a year and a half later, and you have experienced some things at Grace College. Yeah. So I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then maybe we can get into your Grace College story.
Yeah, so get this, Matt, is that I have 3 college degrees. And for some of your listeners might recognize the name Liberty University. And 2/3 of my trio are from Liberty University. And so I've been in the white evangelical world for a long time. And in fact, I was raised in Germany, but we went to an English-speaking international church that was part of, at the time, what was called the European Baptist Convention, which is a spin-off of the Southern Baptist Convention. And I had more than one pastor when I was a young man who graduated from Bob Jones University,
All right.
which you may have heard of, right?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
And so, right. So I was just absolutely, that was my whole world. Even through my early 20s, it was my world. And then I went for 9 years to a place that, in my opinion, has changed dramatically, but it hasn't changed that much. Hillsdale College, and I lived in Hillsdale, Michigan for 9 years, and was a speech and debate coach and member of the faculty there for 9 years. And so I've got my evangelical pedigree, and my conservative pedigree is legit.
It is solid. So
It's solid.
Hillsdale College, like, I don't know much about that, except that it's very right wing, very conservative, like kind of train up kind of the politicians, maybe. Like, this, to me, Hillsdale is like kind of the collision of right wing politics and evangelicalism. Is that fair?
Recently, but only recently, is that I think that the Hillsdale College story really happens in three acts. I think Act 1 is party school. And so one of the urban legends, and I think it's true, is that the screenwriter of Animal House attended, but did not graduate from, Hillsdale College, and some of the caricatures in that film and some of the culture in that film were taken from an old Hillsdale College. And then my understanding from being there for a number of years is that Larry Yarn came in. Larry Yarn is a brilliant man, really excellent fundraiser, I think a talented leader. And he came in and said, you know what, we're not going to be, there was a period then where it kind of pivoted right to a little bit under George Roche. With Larry Yarn came in and said, we're just going to be the best. Right? We're going to focus on academics. We're going to focus on being the best liberal arts college, period. And then between 2015, 2017, the leadership of the college pivoted with the rise of national populism, and then went much more into alliance with social conservatism. Is that they'd always had a strand of intellectual conservatism, William F. Buckley Jr., right, and being thinking conservatives and conscientious conservatives. Since 2015/2017, I think they've gone much more on, to speak plainly, the Trump train.
Yeah.
But that's all to say, I knew where I was coming from when I came to Grace College, right? And you said, danger, danger, danger. And you were right, I think, in your first estimation. But I came down interviewing Grace College as much as Grace College was interviewing me. And I remember telling my wife the day before my interview at Grace College, I'm going to go see about these people, and I'm skeptical, right? Because I expected maybe some fundamentalism. But I was told by the dean at the time in terms of fundamentalism, we're a recovering Bible college, but we are doing everything we can to be a liberal arts college. And I'm telling you that the people I interviewed with really didn't represent the idea of grace that you had.
Okay.
And I have no regrets coming down and joining the community I joined. Is the people that interviewed me and the people that hired me are humble. They love Jesus. They are world-class scholars. They're, to this day, my friends. They have given me absolutely stalwart support, even up to the present moment, saying, we love you, we appreciate you, and you're part of this community, right? And so I believe if you ask the program director that hired me, ask the chair that hired me, ask the dean that hired me, I can't speak for them, but I believe they would say, we have no regrets. Matt was the right man for this job, and Matt was a good fit and for being here. And in fact, it was my dream job. I love challenging students to live well, right? And then in my teaching philosophy in a Christian setting, we just changed that live well to love well, right? My challenge is, how can we love well? And we really do that, I think, by following hard after Jesus. And so it was my dream job coming to a liberal arts college where I can challenge students to think, and challenge students to think as followers of Jesus. And I was very upfront, even with Drew Flam, the president of Grace College. We had a conversation about Michel Foucault, right? Some of your listeners might know him. He is a post-structuralist philosopher. Some might say a postmodern philosopher, right? About when and where is it appropriate to bring in some of my cultural critical scholarship. Where is it appropriate to bring in challenging ideas that are very clearly from non-Christian perspectives in order to challenge the faith of the students? So I thought I was coming to an open-minded place where we have unity under the umbrella of Christ.
Okay.
But I was surprised. I was wrong, Matt.
Mm.
I think your thing was correct.
Let's stop there for a minute and I guess jump ahead for a minute and like, why are we even having this conversation in the first place? Like, for those who are unfamiliar with kind of the reason that you've been in Christianity Today recently, you were even in Newsweek recently. How interesting. What happened, Matt? What got you into Newsweek and Christianity Today?
A couple. Oh yeah, this is where the story gets good.
Yeah.
A couple right-wing activists. One used to be a Turning Point USA activist. One used to be a Tea Party activist. Who did a selective keyword search through 10 years of tweets, pulled out the ones that they knew would be the most incendiary to a conservative constituency, and went on a Facebook-driven post or Facebook-driven campaign that ended up misrepresenting my faith and character, making me look very combative, and and then calling for my immediate termination. And the short story is, without following process and without giving me a chance to express myself or my love for my Grace College students or my love for my Grace College colleagues or my support for the Grace College mission, the president of Grace College, Drew Flam, decided unilaterally that it wasn't going to work out and non-renewed my employment agreement and left me without a job. Essentially giving the right-wing activists control over the administrative functions of the college and leaving me out, more or less looking for my next opportunity, right, is one way to put it. And yeah, I mean, that's the short story is an online cancel culture mob came for me and the college just said, yep, we'll give you what you want, and kicked me out.
There's so much to unpack there, so much to discuss. I like, even stepping back a little bit, I think about a place like Grace. I did, when I first heard that this was starting to happen, I had some friends who were saying, oh, check out what's happening to Matt Warner at Grace. I got on Facebook. I did some, I typed in your name and Grace College, and I saw the posts. I saw the woman who was kind of coming for you and what she was saying. And it was pretty hysterical. And like, our kids are, this wolf in sheep's clothing is, like infiltrating Grace with these left-wing crazy, ideas. And I mean, of course, the ideas that were being talked about were things that I actually believe in and support and want to see students open to and understanding in new ways. I was immediately thinking about the LGBTQ kids at Grace, the kids who are there because, of course, it doesn't matter. Any institution, any college, no matter how conservative, no matter what, is going to have queer kids, is going to have kids that are there. And I was thinking back to my own school journey. I was thinking, even since coming out fairly recently, I have reconnected with so many friends from Grace who have come out of the closet, and we've talked about our years there. We have gotten connected with current students at Grace, current students who have a group chat, who are always trying to support each other, kind of this whole underground queer community at Grace College right now. And these kind of right-wing activists may not want to see that, but of course it's there. Of course it's there. It's in every school. It's in every place in the world. And so I'm aware of and grateful for any any professor, any loving, understanding adult who happens to be in those spaces, who can be loving and kind and maybe a light or a beacon in those situations to those kinds of students who might need a supportive listening ear in an overwhelmingly conservative culture, who might see somebody like a Matt Warner and be like, I wonder if he's a safe person to talk to. I wonder if he's someone who might be able to see and hear me and maybe get me to some resources or something, and I don't know. This is just what immediately came to my mind.
And can I tell you that, and in hindsight, it might have been part of what convinced the college to get rid of me. Before I even started at Grace College, right, I'm not naive. I worked at Liberty University for a couple of years. It's a long story. The dean got axed. The associate dean got axed. My chair got axed under Jerry Falwell Jr. We'll do that in another podcast. But knowing from my time there that a number of my students who were same-sex attracted as Liberty students would not bring it up except in the most roundabout ways, right? Like, so maybe I would read a project they did in which they're bringing in things that are suggesting or hinting that there are in that environment, that very, very conservative environment, they would say struggling with same-sex attraction. Then they graduate, right? And I have several graduates just from being there for about 2 years who are now openly gay and happily openly gay, right? Like, hey, here I am, world. And so I look back and say, Liberty University missed a huge opportunity because Liberty University did not provide a space to have a conversation without condemnation. Didn't have a space to say, we're going to listen to you and we're going to say, we know what it feels like to be in love, and we know what it feels like to see somebody else and want to spend your life with them. And instead of the current culture there is, right, refer them to the dean of men, refer them to the dean of students, and exit out, right? I'm like, that's not effective. What's effective is saying, we're adults, we're here to mentor you, support you, and love you. And so I emailed Drew Flam, the president of Grace College, before I started and said, when I was at Liberty, we missed a lot of opportunities and we did not have conversations about student sexuality. And then they're graduating and coming out, shocking nobody that knew them when they were undergraduate.
Of course.
And said, we need to change the culture, and I'm going to come help you change the culture, and we're going to love these kids, and we're going to meet them without condemnation, and we're going to wrestle through difficult things together, right? And so I knew that was a struggle of Christian colleges, is going to be a struggle of Christian colleges, is not having adults who are in a position to be mentors, adults who are in positions to love students that are discovering who they are in every sense of the word, and then graduating. And I just think that's every single one is just a missed opportunity for discipleship, a missed opportunity for relationships with people that love them and care for them. And yeah, so I'd put that more or less in an email to Drew Flam after I got hired and said, hey, I'm so pumped about coming to Grace College and making sure that we take care of everybody. Right.
So I guess back to your story, when you got hired, when you went into the situation, did you know that you tended to be more on the liberal progressive side than the kind of average person at Grace? Did you see yourself as being on, I don't know. I guess I'm just asking in general, like, where were you in the spectrum, and how did that? Were you concerned about that? Did that register with you? How did you go into this Grace College community, which we now know is a very conservative place? How did you see yourself fitting in there?
I've been in evangelical spaces and conservative higher ed for a long time, Matt.
Yeah.
And so I read the ground pretty quickly, and I could see that my research presentation was fully transparent about my critical perspectives, right? I'm a critical cultural scholar, and I'm looking at things like settler colonialism, and I'm looking at things like manifest destiny, and things like the perpetuation of whiteness in our dominant narratives, right? Like that's what my scholarship does. And so I went and presented that. And I remember a number of people that I ended up working with as colleagues came to that research presentation and were saying, wait a minute. Do you have a critical postmodern analysis of settler colonialism and you're a Christian? Right? Like for them,
Right.
like,
those two things don't match somehow.
But the response was, I love it. That's brilliant. That's so interesting. I love how you can bring your faith and map that onto things that the Christians have given up to the world, right? And so I'm saying, oh no, I'm fully Christian and I can engage in the world without giving up any of my faith. And so I knew I was maybe a little bit more progressive, a little bit more critically trained, a little bit more, I don't like the term liberal, right? But I'll adopt progressive, right? I'll say I was more progressive than the colleagues from the sciences and from the humanities and from the library that came and gave me really positive feedback on saying, I'm not going to let the world have all of scholarship, right? Like I can be a Christian and do scholarship that's cutting edge.
Yeah.
But then I read the room also. I interviewed with the associate dean of the seminary, and I interviewed with the provost, and I interviewed with some theology professors. And I was like, all right, so there's a divide here. Like there's a tension between the seminary and the seminarians and the theology professors and where I was, which was in the School of Arts and Humanities. And so the answer, Matt, is I was eyes wide open about the divide. I went and said, I'm going to be a bridge builder. And so I went, and the first couple of weeks of school, I went and emailed one of our professors at Grace, one of their professors at Grace that writes a lot of commentaries and is known to be conservative. And I said, let's go to lunch. And we went to lunch. And in fact, when this drama hit the fan, is I talked first to my chair and then to my dean. And then I went to the associate dean of the seminary because I assumed we're here on the same team and you're going to support me, right? But I went in as a bridge builder, and I thought that I was going to be able to, under the unity of Christ, say, you can be progressive, you can be conservative, you can write commentaries which are affirmed by the Gospel Coalition, or you can do scholarship that's about settler colonialism and whiteness, and we can do it at Grace College. I was naive, Matt, as you know.
Yeah, of course.
In hindsight, the folks saw me as a threat and a liability, and not as a brother in Christ, and not as a colleague.
It sounds to me like this really came to the surface, though, only when it was pointed out by activists from outside. Is that true?
1,000%. Right. Is my dean and my chair and my program director and my colleagues and the people in the search committee and the people across the college that interviewed me knew who I was. And if they didn't know who I was, had every opportunity, right? On my Facebook, on my Twitter, I used to have a Medium, right, where I wrote some articles. I mean, you could go and just spend 10 minutes Googling me, not even 5 minutes Googling me, and see that I don't fit the square, the neat square that they expect evangelical politics to fit into.
Right.
And so it was only when, these activists brought things up that anybody cared at the college. But nobody, can I just be clear on one thing, Matt?
Yeah.
Is I was fully aligned with the college from day one. And then on October 10th, I was meeting with the president of Grace College, and he said, I understand you signed our documents, our faith, our lifestyle commitment. And then I just had a meeting with our HR 2 days ago. And I said, isn't it sad that we didn't follow our own internal theological commitment to reconciliation? And he said, Matt, there was nothing to reconcile because you didn't do anything wrong. You can only reconcile if there's a mistake. You can only reconcile if there's a problem. You executed your contract and we didn't have a problem. So there's no reason to reconcile. It just didn't work out. And so I started aligned with the college and I ended aligned with the college. Words of HR, no need for reconciliation because you've done.
So let's talk about that, because I know a lot of people on Twitter would have questions about that. Like when you went to Grace, being at least what one might call relatively progressive in your thinking and wanting to be this kind of bridge builder, and yet Grace being a really conservative theological institution, there's these kind of biblical, I mean, I don't know, lifestyle requirements, theological, maybe a doctrinal statement that you had to sign. Tell us what you had to sign or what you had to be. You're saying you were in alignment. You still are in alignment with whatever the college expects of you. What is that? And you say you're still in alignment with that. What?
Yeah.
How so, I guess?
Yeah, good question, Matt. Well, there's two things to sign. There's a covenant of faith. And well, let me back up and say that it's the Christianity Today article and the Religion News Service article, right? Both made put a focus on gay marriage, right? And so then the question is, what does Matt think about gay marriage? And so in terms of that context, the covenant of faith says nothing about gay marriage. It's pretty straightforward evangelical doctrine, right? We believe in the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the Bible, orthodox, almost creedal things, right? And then there's also a lifestyle statement, and the lifestyle statement has a paragraph on reconciliation. It has a paragraph on representing the college well, and it has one sentence that says, we affirm that marriage is a holy connection between a man and a woman, right? And so, like you and I have talked before the podcast and separately, is can I sign a document that has one sentence in it that says, I believe that God designed marriage as between a man and a woman? Yes, I can, and I did. And I would again from where I sit today and say, yeah, I believe that, right? But I think that I learned painfully, very, very painfully, I learned that I took it at face value and said, all I have to do is say, I believe this. And I do believe, I think that's something I believe. But the implication of them putting it in the lifestyle statement, which they added in 2015, is that, well, there's also a so what, and there's also a now what. And that now what is we need to denounce LGBTQ plus people, and we need to see LGBTQ plus people as a threat to Christendom and American society and the moral order, right? And so all that baggage that you knew was there, I did not assume was there based on my interview with wonderful, wonderful colleagues and based on the language of the text, which says, you're asking what I believe as an individual, period, is, right? And so when it goes beyond that, all of that is implied. Everything is implied. And I think that's a question, to be honest, Matt. The pain this removal has caused me is an issue of institutional integrity that I encourage the board of Grace College, the president of Grace College, to take seriously.
So those kinds of, I mean, and this is two kind of differing paths that we can walk down depending on kind of where we want to go with this conversation. But this, it's difficult because for so many LGBTQ people, it's this kind of ambiguity of what does a person, what does an institution, what does a church believe about our identities, about our relationships, that can cause a lot of pain, that can cause a lot of harm. We often experience the bait and switch of coming to a church that says, we welcome you, please come and be a part of our communities. Sometimes people will go to church for a year and feel so welcome and loved and included. And then when they ask to be married, for instance, the pastor has to have the awkward closed door conversation where they're like, well, actually, we believe that you're living in sin and we can't bless this. And those kinds of things are so harmful. And so that's why we advocate so often for clarity, like put it up front. Do you or do you not believe that my marriage to my husband, Alejandro, is sinful? Is it or is it not? And that's why we ask for these clarity type questions, because we believe ultimately it is harmful to have this kind of ambiguousness about our beliefs, And so, I think you and I have talked before about you're kind of like in this transition, or you're in this kind of, you're maybe not sure exactly where you're at when it comes to personally what you believe to be true about sexuality. Is that, would you say that that's true about you?
Well, I can certainly say I've changed, and I've probably evolved in the last 9 months, right?
Yeah.
As I've been confronted with this, and I've certainly evolved over the years. Is right, like I introduced myself to a colleague, right? Friend would be too strong of a word, but we stayed in touch now and again over the last 10 years, who is a leading queer scholar in the field of communication. And I was fortunate enough to have dinner with him, and he came and spoke to one of my classes when I was doing my doctoral coursework at Wayne State University. And so I prefaced the conversation by saying, I'm an evangelical Christian who's a deacon at my church, and it's an independent Baptist church, and I have 2 degrees from Liberty University.
Yeah.
With that said, why is it that you care so much about marriage? Marriage seems to be an institution that belongs to the church. And it seems like to me, you're co-opting something that belongs to my faith tradition. Why can't you just have a civil union? Why can't you call it something else? Why do you have to have marriage? And I was just in my, just starting to emerge out, and this is a separate story, out of my culture wars fighting mentality, bring up be God. But his answer changed my perspective forever. He said, because, right, when my lifelong monogamous partner is deathly ill, I am treated as a stranger at the door of the hospital. They won't tell me what room he's in. They won't tell me what his medical condition is. They won't allow me to go and hold his hand and sit with him, right? And that, the language of Twitter is that radicalized me. And that did radicalize me is hearing that, right, sitting right next to this guy and hearing him share his heart of how painful it is when the only family you have in the world is not there, right? It's almost, it was not immediate, but definitely a switch got flipped for me. I need to think about this differently. This is not a question of culture wars. This is not a question of decency or morality or sin. This is a question of, I guess it is a question of decency. Are we going to be decent enough to allow people to be together with the people that they've made their lives with in their most crucial and most important times? Right. And that was 10 years ago. And then, right, I'm even being challenged. This is my challenge. I think I shared with you via text message is on pick any issue, pick young earth or old earth creationism, pick, I don't know, pick that one, pick divorce, pick any issue, and then go and read all the books. Then go and have all the conversations, and then go and listen to all the voices and listen to all the stories. And you'll see people who love Jesus and people who are following hard after Jesus and people who take the Bible seriously come down differently. And have good arguments and good reasons and the fruit of the Holy Spirit in their lives. Different points of view. And I think that's my evolution where I've been the last 9 months, right? Is to say, people come down differently. And I think that we can come down and say, I believe X without condemning you and Alejandro, right? I have a recommendation for you. But I think that what the right-wing activists expected of me is, no, if you say you believe God designed marriage to be a man and a woman, then you need to hate the sin and love the sinner, which I think is just the dumbest phrase, right? There's no reason for hating anything. What we need to do is love you, love Alejandro, love the way that God loves you, right? He looks at you and says, you're stunning. He looks at you and says, you're loved. He looks at you and says, my creation is beautiful and my creation has imminent value that deserves respect. And I think that's my journey, right? Is people that love Jesus can disagree on big things. And God does not need me to be theologically correct on everything, but he needs me to love with recklessly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's probably not a satisfying answer for you, right?
no,
But it's certainly
just
not a satisfying answer for Grace College either.
yeah. No, I hear you, and these are the kinds of really just painful and difficult questions that are so challenging and so important to continue to talk about. And these are the kinds of questions that literally like get people canceled on Twitter day and night. And I have, my own journey. I have evolved in kind of the way I think about these things. I am all about trying to have grace and hold space for people with different views than I have. I want to be a bridge builder. I absolutely want to, like, in my contemplative spirituality journey and the ways that I try to hold space for people. I believe deeply that we have to simply be where we are. I cannot, like, if you are where you are, that's where you are. Like, I cannot insist that you not be where you are. How can I? How can I? And so, like, even if I want you to be somewhere different from where you are theologically or wherever, I can't insist on that. And even if I want you to get there eventually, shutting the door in your face and condemning you is probably not going to create that end. It's not going to.
Yeah.
So, and the other piece about this that's interesting to me is, like, I don't think personally, I don't believe that that quote unquote loving, not so for those listening who are not familiar with these terms, like even the term affirming, right? What is that, right? In kind of common gay Christian conversations, affirming would be those who say God can and does bless same-sex relationships, like that my marriage to my husband, even if we have sex, is not inherently sinful. That's not something I need to confess and gain absolution from or for. So I would be and there's even terms like side A and side B. I'm a side A gay Christian in that language, in that vocabulary, because I don't believe there's anything inherently sinful about being gay or about having a husband as a man, and even having gay sex as a as a married man who's whatever. And there's a whole spectrum. There's a huge wide spectrum for those listening who don't know this. Everything from, like, it's sinful to be gay and you got to change that and you can't even have gay attraction, to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It is a wide spectrum. And while I fall very much on one pretty radical far left side of that spectrum, I don't think that, like, the loving, non-affirming people are going far enough. And in fact, I still believe that theology, no matter how sincerely and lovingly held, I still think that theology is harmful. Ultimately, that's my conviction and belief. I look at somebody like a Preston Sprinkle, who is a theologian and writer who is so, to me, I believe, earnest and sincere and trying to help people and loving, and also has what I would call homophobic theology and transphobic theology. And I believe his theology ultimately is harmful, net harmful. And I see why he holds it. I think he's sincere. I don't know. Hope I don't get canceled for all this. And I think his theology ultimately is harmful. However, this is where it gets difficult and nuanced. In a place like Grace College, where the whole institution is evangelical, verging on fundamentalist, where gay kids who happen to be there and are there and cannot be anywhere else, I almost feel like that it's a step. It's better than nothing, right? It's better to have a loving, non-affirming professor there who at least will listen and love and be open. And, like, I'd rather, that's at the bridge. It's a step. It's a baby step. You know what I'm saying? So I'll stop talking to you, but
let me. We're
getting
right to brass tacks, Matt.
Yeah.
Right? Like when it comes down to loving people, right. I told you this before the podcast. I'll tell your audience is gay marriage has never been something that is high on my list of things to learn about or to advocate about. It's something that it's a belief that I happen to have, is that, right, based on the story I just shared, is that it is a civic issue that, because I live in a democracy, I think we should support.
Right, and I love that.
When it comes down to LGBTQ plus issues, how I view it is, when I see other people being mean to God's creation, I cannot handle it, and I will speak against it, right? And so I think one thing I've said a lot about is the groomer discourse, right? I don't care if you're affirming or not affirming, right? I don't care if you are where you are on the spectrum, if you're Matt Nightingale or Preston Sprinkle. If you are calling God's creation a groomer, it's a slur, it's bearing false witness, and all Christians, even if you're a culture war Christian fighting against LGBTQ plus people, should put that aside, stand up and say, stop bearing false witness against God's children, and stop bearing false witness against people who are just being people. And then, right, part of, and here I'm going to get my soapbox for a minute, I think part of that has to do with the evangelical culture you and I were raised in, right? And I think it's a pour over from purity culture. Purity culture infantilizes men and says men are sexual predators. Men are sexual,
they can't help themselves.
Exactly. And then it also then hypersexualizes the female body and says women are always sexual. So men are always looking for sex, and women are always a sexual temptation. And it denies the beauty of God's creation. Like we happen to have bodies. Sometimes in some contexts, they're also sexual bodies, but in general, they're just bodies. But purity culture sexualizes the body 24/7, 365, right? And so I think that purity culture thinking that infantilizes men and saying men can't control their urges, men can't control themselves, and says women have responsibility for avoiding being a temptation, maps on to LGBTQ plus people, right? And feeds into homophobia that I think all Christians, affirming or not, should firmly condemn, right? And say, oh, well, a gay man is always going to be sexual. A gay woman is always going to be sexual. And it's, I think that thinking, just that thinking, right? You can call it theological thinking if you want. I just call it thinking. That thinking, I think, is dehumanizing and denigrating to God's creation. And right, so if somebody looks at you and says, well, Matt Nightingale is a gay man and he is a sexual being, shut up, right? You live in a body created by God that, and like you said, Common Sanctuary is a place to have conversations about human sexuality. Sometimes bodies are sexual, but generally not at work, not on podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
And so I think that's where a lot of what I'm coming at comes from, is I see LGBTQ plus people being caricatured, right? And lies being told about LGBTQ plus people, especially from the right, and really it grieves me, from the Christian right, or just from Christians. And I don't think any Christian should ever be mischaracterizing somebody else. And I think that LGBTQ plus people are mischaracterized every day. Like I can't imagine the difficulty it would be to live your life, and the hate that you receive on Twitter and the hate that you receive, right? It's wrong. And whether I agree with you or not, for me, is secondary. What matters is you deserve to be treated with respect, and you deserve to be treated with eminent value, and you deserve to be, to bring something healthy and beautiful to every relationship. Anyways,
no, I appreciate that. Definitely.
Maybe that makes me affirming or not. I don't know, but that's where I'm at.
Yes. I mean, I hear you and I appreciate that. And I agree with you. I definitely think that no matter our personal convictions about human sexuality, etc., we can stand together against that kind of mischaracterization. And I absolutely get the groomer discourse makes me angry. It is just frankly false, and we get it all the time. I want to be really clear that it happens to trans people all the time, maybe more so than it happens to just gay and lesbian people. It happened a lot to gay and lesbian people maybe 30 years ago, and we have become much more mainstream now. And so now the trans people are getting it. The trans people are the boogeymen of the 21st century. They have become the new target of right-wing extremists, and it is ugly and awful. And I really do all I can to stand with my trans siblings, because it is unbelievably ugly out there. And talk about sexualization of bodies. I am astonished every day how everyone, all the right-wing people that attack me on the daily on Twitter, it is very much about us. And who is it? Has this wonderful book that I read, Julia Serrano, a trans scholar who I really respect and have appreciated so much her books, talks about how society, and I would say conservative society, especially right-wing conservative society, sexualizes LGBTQ bodies on the daily and says we are nothing more than these sex creatures, and we're just people. We are just people. Trans people too, just people. In fact, it's interesting to me how trans identities are often sexualized in this gross, overt way, when it is very much about gender identity and not about sexuality. And this is not understood by the vast majority of conservative folks. It's not about sex at all. It's about gender identity, and that's really hard for people to understand who are not a part of the discourse.
And that's right. One of the things I grieve lots of things about leaving Grace is, a liberal arts college where I can encourage people to love well as they follow Jesus. But one of the things I grieve is I've taught in my upper level theory courses in particular, right? We talk about gender. We talk about the Stonewall riots. We talk about the history of LGBTQ plus activism, right? And I'm not telling any student what to believe. I'm not telling any student what's right or what's wrong or what's sinful or what's not sinful, right? But I say, if you're going to engage in the world as a college graduate and as an educated person, you need to understand what the conversations are, what the terminology is. And it's, I think, no longer a liberal arts college when professors who are willing to have tough conversations in the right classroom at the right time about theories of gender, about gender identity, about gender presentation, about gender expression, right? Like, those are things I can teach in the classroom that Grace College students now won't get, because a professor who's willing to have those conversations, who also loves Jesus, is not welcome in that environment. And now they're going to be less equipped to love people in the world. And we live in the real world. But if that kind of perspective is not welcome at a liberal arts college, then the liberal arts college is not doing service to the students that are going to that college, because they're not going to be ready. They're going. So many alumni, Matt, and you probably know a lot of the same people I know. A lot of alumni reached out to me, and before and after the drama, I had to educate myself on so many things after I graduated, because I was not exposed to the ideas of the world. So I had to engage with them on my own post graduation instead of dealing with them in college where I should have.
Do you see this as certainly at Liberty, certainly Grace, do you see this as a trend? I mean, there's such, these are, this whole culture war, this is just a small microcosm of what's happening in the larger culture. I think this is culture war stuff. This is Biden versus Trump stuff. This is civil war stuff. This is 50% of the country believes this, and 50% of the country believes this, and never the twain shall meet. This is what I'm seeing anyway. What do we do about that polarization of, it's either this or it's this, and I don't know. That just came to me as you were talking. I'm like, what do we do? And Grace, maybe for a brief little moment, you had the dream that maybe you could be a middle ground person at Grace, maybe. And they were like, nope, we don't do that here. Sorry.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, Chris, right? Like, the college, even after the drama came out, like, I'll tell you about a meeting I had October 13th, right? And how poignant this is I said to Drew Flam, the president of Grace College, I believe Black trans lives matter. And I need to be able to say, as a member of your faculty, Black trans lives matter. Whether you believe in the values of Black Lives Matter, right, generally, or whether you believe in, if you're fully affirming or not on issues of trans identity or trans expression, irrelevant.
Right.
Black trans lives matter because
Because they do.
because they do. They're stunningly beautiful and important to our Creator, right? Period. The end. I don't want to have a debate about it because God loves them, right? So if I need to say Black trans lives matter, what I'm doing is I'm affirming the dignity of that person as a person made in God's image.
Yeah.
And so I expressed all that in a meeting with Drew Flam, October 13th. And he said, I can understand how you can say that from a biblically orthodox point of view. However, it creates an adverse reaction in a significant number of our constituents.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, because if we don't have any students, we can't fulfill our mission.
Right.
And so we can unpack that for a minute and say, I was there at Grace College, and Grace College was ready to turn the corner and say, let's have conversations like you and I are having right now, like you have all the time. We're going to have over and over again. And rather than have those conversations, they said, they lawyered up, basically. They lawyered up. HR wouldn't talk to me until it had been vetted by their labor lawyer, and did not engage with me beyond that. And right? Because, right, they said, we can understand where you're coming from, but the parents of students cannot, and we cannot.
Yeah.
Right? That level of fear is just an obstacle. Right? Is the level of fear we have is just unsustainable. We've got to move. We've got to do better as Christians.
Yes, we do. I agree. I really do.
Right. So teaching, so I think maybe the educational piece there is just missing. We're afraid to teach, right? The president of Grace College was afraid to teach the parents about what it means to care about justice and love Jesus.
What do you think this does for, like, you had colleagues there. I know you don't want to name names or get anyone in trouble who's still there, or, there's probably, I understand there's probably a culture of fear there now of people who were friends of yours, are friends of yours, and are like, gosh, am I next? Like, we better batten down the hatches. And so what do you think is
nailed it?
What's happening now?
What's happening now is the culture of fear is, I did nothing wrong and I lost my job. Ask the president or ask HR. The president said on December 7th, when he told me that the board had decided not to ratify me as a faculty, which is a whole nother level of malfeasance and terrible leadership, right? But when he told me that, he said, many people, including me, value and appreciate the impact you've made here. And it's obvious you're an excellent professor, and thank you for that, right? But also, you can't work here anymore, and we're firing you. Although they wouldn't say firing, they would say, non-renewing. A different,
yeah.
What's the difference? But what that's left is nobody knows what the next landmine is going to be. Monica Booker, and I'll say her name out loud, right, is king of Grace College. And if she decides to come after somebody, the administration and the board will just say, okay, and would rather give the right wing, the loudest right wing, what they want. And so, my colleagues, and not just a few of them, a significant portion of my colleagues are terrified because from their point of view, there's no institutional integrity. What if I have a Black Lives Matter sticker in my car? More than a couple staff have Black Lives Matter stickers in their car. Next.
Well, yeah, I would assume that they're scraping those things off their cars right now, and they're looking through their social media to make sure that they're, not going to get in trouble.
And I'm working with really, really smart, well-educated, thinking people, and they recognize we don't know what the next landmine is going to be, right? Today it's DEI. Last year it was critical race theory. They don't know what's next, right? But I will say, it's a culture of fear. But they still work there, and they are going to go into those classrooms and love the students. Right. And they are still my dear friends, advising me and standing by me. And I would be in the fetal position, metaphorically and literally, in my bed under the covers, if it wasn't for the love and support of my colleagues. And they're coming back to work disillusioned by the leadership,
Yeah.
but supported by each other and supported by the students. The students are wonderful. The faculty are wonderful. There's some tension there between some of the groups. By and large, the faculty are wonderful, and they're going to go and do the things that I couldn't do.
Yeah. What have you heard from students? Have you had any, like, do you feel supported by students? Have there been questions? What has been the reaction from students?
The students are, like all students everywhere, are learning, right? And I think this was really a kind of, in hindsight, a nice opportunity for them to learn how to use their voice. But I was trying to be as hands-off as I could, right? I'm like, all right, students, here's how you organize. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? I didn't do any of that because I don't want to be seen as a partisan fighting for myself.
Right.
But they took it upon themselves. A number of them took it upon themselves to have meetings with the president and the provost. A number of them tried to start a prayer-oriented sit-in at the president's office in protest of my removal. And there was a organized letter writing campaign that some seniors started that gained quite a bit of traction of people saying, I don't feel safe here if Dr. Warner is not. Right. And so the students, and then the personal outpouring, I have a stack of letters, man, my course evaluations were very kind. But partially because of the job, I think, partially because of what was happening. But then I also have a stack of personal letters, personal emails, personal notes, thank you cards that said, thank you for challenging me to think. Thank you for showing me what it looks like to live with grace and integrity under pressure. Thank you for what you showed me and taught me about engaging in the world as a follower of Christ in a cutthroat business setting. So the students have just been wonderful.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I've noticed is people are coming out of the woodwork from other institutions. And I'm not going to name names, but if I had to name names, I could probably name 15 colleges at the top of my head where other professors texted me, emailed me, one called me on the phone, got the number from a mutual friend, and said, what happened to you was the same thing that happened to me. That one thing that we've done in this terrible, terrible situation for me is we've gotten a little bit of traction and got a little bit of a catalyst for a number of displaced professors to come together and say, what are the common denominators here is what happened to you and what happened to you and what happened to you and what happened to you is the playbook, right? Is excellent professors, good scholars, excellent engagement with the students, high collegiality, commitment to the mission. They make a donor mad, they make a board member mad, they make a parent mad, and now they've lost their job, like Julie Moore or Sam Jokol or Matt Warner. But it's just the three that have had national news recently is many more that have not. They're sharing stories, they're reaching out. And so we're putting our heads together on how to have a shared voice.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, we are almost out of time. I was remembering one thing that made me smile. When you got to go back, because there was some debate whether you'd even be allowed back for the second semester of your first year, I remember. And when you, it's too long a story to go into right now because we're at the end of our time. But I loved when I heard what class you were teaching in the second semester. I got a good laugh out of that. What was that class that you were teaching in the communications department?
Yeah. I'll take 5 seconds and do a setup.
Okay. Yes, please do.
Yeah. In December, they came to me and said, here's $60,000 gross for your voluntary resignation. And so I, in early January, wrote up my reason why I'm going to reject it. I said, no, I'm a faculty member in good standing. I've done a good job. I support the mission. I've done nothing wrong. I'm coming back and you can't stop me. My lawyer, and I got a very, very good lawyer, my lawyer said they will fire you if you reject this, because once they offer you an NDA, it's not optional. If you reject it, they're just going to terminate you. Yeah. And my friend said the same thing. And my wife and I talked and said, I guess we're ready for them to just fire me.
Yeah.
And they turned around and said, well, I guess technically you're right. So I guess technically you can come back. And I taught. And so, yeah, January of 2024, I taught social media communication. The deepest, most beautiful, God-ordained irony of my life is social media communication, taught by me, ousted because of my social media advocacy for marginalized voices and LGBTQ plus people.
I just think that's a beautiful irony, and I appreciate that story.
Thanks for bringing that.
Yes. All right. Well, we are at the end of our time. I feel like we could talk for much, much longer. So I appreciate your voice. I appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing. This will live on my YouTube channel, so people can check it out. And again, let me quickly run these banners. Follow Matt over on Twitter if you'd like, at Matt J. Warner. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Matt Nightingale. Please check out Common Sanctuary at Common Sanctuary on Facebook and Instagram, and Sanctuary Common, because someone else got the other one on Twitter. And check out my website at mattnightingale.com or commonsanctuary.org. I'll be back next month with a great conversation with a guy named Matt Heinker, who has a wonderful podcast called Through the Long Night. Check it out. Matt, thank you for being with us. And talk to you soon. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.